Welcome back to another episode of the Be Extraordinary podcast. What is up, gentlemen?
What up?
Good to be back, man.
Good. Oh, man.
Another one.
I'll tell you what.
It's getting fun.
It's getting fun. You know, I feel like every time we step into this...
The cast of characters just keeps getting better and better and better.
I'm telling you. And today, ladies and gentlemen, it will not disappoint. We've got the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Ron Bonner in the house. Thank you so much for being
guys.
here.
Yeah, man. Happy New Year.
Yep.
Great to see you. Nice to see you in here.
2022. Freaking weird, man. We're in the future.
Yeah.
No kidding.
Unbelievable, man. Well, I'll tell you what, we've been talking about this for a long time.
Yeah.
We sat down, we did do you remember when we did that kind of that Q&A and that I got to hear your story?
At the waterfront.
Yep. And put together an article that we were doing on just a local, like a local article about different entrepreneurs in the area and your story. And, Ronnie, when we talked, man, we were there for like 2 hours, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, we were just hanging out, having beers.
A few beers.
Yeah. And man, your story is unbelievable. Unbelievable. So if you're listening to this podcast right now, I'm telling you, you better buckle up. And if you're driving right now, when you get to where you're going, you probably won't get out of the car. Because if you love to hear success stories, challenges, and people that just have grit and put up and just find a way, and then also have just passion for what they do, this is going to be a podcast for you, man. So not only the creativity of your journey, not only the grit of your journey, but also just the creativity. I haven't had the chance to work directly with somebody who has this creative type business, and you just, through your story, we'll get into it, but just reinvent, more creative. And it just seems like you've got this magic touch that, you just blossom these cool brands, man. It's really awesome.
I think that magic touch is called being delusional.
A little bit of crazy.
Yeah. I'm not right, guys. I'm not right.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, we're all a little delusional, right? So, well, man, I want to kind of give a quick background for Ronnie here today for the viewers that obviously don't know you. We've had a chance to work together, over the last...
Since almost the early years?
Pushing 5 years. Pushing 5, 6 years.
Longer than that.
I think commercial, though.
Actually, probably when we met was about 6-7 years ago. So
Yeah.
about 6-7 years. Man, that's crazy. It feels like it's been like 10.
Wow.
That's
unbelievable. Well,
cool.
It is cool. So, I would consider you the godfather of BMX bike apparel, right? I mean, like, you're like the guy.
No, I mean, I'm 34 years in being self-employed, so I wouldn't say godfather, but definitely, I've earned my stripes, I believe.
You're a made man.
Heck yeah, man.
I've earned it, being passionate and giving back.
There's a word we talked about yesterday, earned.
Yeah.
There's a lot to be said about that, and to hear you say it that way.
Well, man, Ronnie, by the way, if you could scoot up, I don't want people to miss this too.
Yep,
so,
absolutely.
But you were creating BMX apparel and sketches and all this stuff before BMX was even like a niche. Before BMX was
BMX started in the 70s, almost the same exact time as skateboarding. About 10 years later in a sense, but like in Venice Beach, when you hear about the Dogtown Z Boys, they, in the same pools, the same place, skateboarding and BMX essentially started at the same time. But BMX was always controlled by families and fathers that were businessmen that went to BMX races. Yeah. It always had a lot of dudes that would come in. The passion would not keep them there. They would leave. Our sport took longer to prosper.
Got it.
But that being said, our sport really is kind of like from the 80s. The 80s are kind of like freestyle, street, everything from there. So it's really a really young niche, really, even though it gets locked into cycling, and cycling is obviously the oldest wheeled sport, like in the world, it's like, so yeah, I wouldn't say godfather, but
you say 80s and freestyle, man. I remember I put all my money one summer into a pair of white Skyway mags. How about that?
Man,
that's 80s, baby.
Money, man. I loved having white parts back then. It was
white Sky, and they had to be Skyway mags, right? I think those were the ones back then,
were
right?
good,
yeah,
man. They're still around. Yeah,
wow.
Still around. It's crazy.
That's awesome. And of course, I have no idea what you guys are talking about. I'm like, the 80s?
Dude.
I only had 2 years. I was 2 years old.
I remember when I told my parents I wanted to spend, I forget what they were, but I'm like, I want to buy these. They're like, well, you save your money. I said, well, I did. And they're like, wait, you're going to spend that? I'm like, oh, yeah.
Yes.
That's awesome.
I miss them days.
Damn, man. I wish my son now had that bearing on
man, it's
on
different
what we
now.
used to do back then, man.
Yeah, mow lawns, do whatever.
Do whatever you got to do. Well, that's
When the street lights come on, go home.
Yeah, absolutely.
Doesn't matter where you are.
Oh, I miss that.
yeah. Well, man, so, kind of the way that we talk, the way we met was, obviously doing some business together, but then backing up on your story, I mean, Ron has created multiple different brands in this business. He is considered, in my opinion, iconic in regards to just the sport in general of what he's been able to do and his team has been able to do. All these different verticals to be able to serve BMX and be a contributor. You give back. You're a huge champion for the sport. We're going to get into the first company when you started when 16 years old and when you sold that. I know Shadow Conspiracy is a big one that you take a lot of pride in, especially the marketing and kind of the creativity that came from that, just from the apparel side of the business. Sabrosa has been kind of the BMX, the bike brand, right, for the actual bikes. It's been recent. Those are sick, by the way. If you ever go into Ronnie's, his lab, I guess, if you will, they've got some ridiculous bikes in there. It's amazing. And then got Rocksteady. I know you told me the story about flying to Taiwan and creating basically what is today your trading company to be able to get that shipped into the country.
That was to start Shadow, and it was man, when we get to that part of the story, it was crazy.
It's just,
so crazy.
I mean, it's just unbelievable. And all these different facets to kind of, your business is so complex and you have all these different gears.
Too complex.
You just have all these gears and all these different things going on at once. And, pun intended, right? And I'm just, I'm always, impressed with, you have, from a business standpoint, it's a significant business, but also just being able to continue to create that creative side of your business that still keeps it, it still keeps it that brand that, the BMX, biking community is usually, I mean, it's obviously a younger community in general.
Yep.
And to keep that fresh all the time for being in the business so long is just absolutely spectacular. I know you're one of the best. So I kind of wanted to just, if I could, just kind of go back in memory lane a little bit. One of the things that kind of pulled me to your story and all of us was just how young you started in this. And, it kind of just was on accident, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it was 16 years old?
I think 15-ish or something like that. I was in high school. I was in a drafting student, probably my second year of architecture, and I realized my math sucked. So I was like, maybe I was digging in the closet, and I found some screen printing equipment in there, and I was like, oh, shoot, man, this is kind of cool. And I was really into the idea of cruise. So I just like, oh, man, I just came up with a name called UGP, Underground Products, and then I just started screen printing on paper in the class, and then my friends were like, that's cool, blah, blah. Next thing you know, I just started kind of going from there. But funny things kind of back up. Like I mowed lawns, I washed dishes, I did everything. I got my first job in 8th grade, summer of 8th grade going into high school. And I remember the guy I showed up, it's called Warm Beer and Lousy Food. And the guy looks me up and down, and he's like, I wasn't even old enough to even technically have a job, Right. So he goes, you're big enough, you got the job, So I get a job washing dishes, I'm mowing lawns, I'm doing all these things, and I end up saving all this money with the intentions. I thought I had made it clear with my parents that my intentions were I was going to buy a motorcycle. And so I was like, okay, cool. I finally get the $500, and I'm like, I'm buying one. They're like, no, you're not. Thank God they said no, because that $500 later on became my $500 seed money to start UGP.
Wow.
Wow. So, and that was 10th, 11th grade, and I started off with T-shirts. And I started selling T-shirts to all the local alternative stores called Spotted Zebra, Unity, whatnot. They were in bicycle stores.
Unity, oh my gosh.
So I started selling to those guys, and I'd print 12, and I would go down and put them, and they would sell. And I would be like, oh man, just crazy. I'm going to bring back another 12. My mom used to be the one to like hold the screen down while I was screen printing. So you rule, Mama B. So
Where'd you grow up? Where were you?
I went to Lake Howell High School.
Oh, so you're local.
Yeah, I grew up right on the. If I went to live one street over, I would go on Winter Park. Since I lived on this street, I went to Lake Howell.
Yeah.
So it's. I mean, thank God, because no offense, Lake Howell, but it was a horrible school. And I mean, the school was so janky that the photography room was made of paneling, and there were slits in the walls, and light would come into the dark room. So it was like
in the photography room.
Janky. Yeah, I like that.
Thank God it was, because I don't know if I was in a different surroundings, I might have been distracted by other things. So I'm glad that it wasn't the way it was,
Right.
What you just said that I think is so cool and so powerful back, and I don't think it's the same times we're living in now, but you said in 8th grade you started working. You saved $500, you were in 11th or 12th grade.
I saved it and had it for a while.
Yep.
Yeah,
And I just think to myself, there's a clue, right? I mean, that's doing a lot of work over a long period of time, and say, hey, 3 years later, I will look up and I met my goal of making $500.
Well, I've realized two things about my personality. The things that I truly love the most aren't very expensive. And this is something I've always been into, even since I was a little kid. The things that I want, I mean, yes, I do like nice things, and things I really like do cost a lot more than normal. But as a kid, from 8th grade till 10th or so, not spending the money or doing some, it was obviously not a conscious thing, but it was a subconscious thing, So
It's amazing.
And for me, I'm never driven by money. I'm still not today driven by money. When I was young, older guys be like, dude, you need to have money to make money. I'm like, no, you don't. I'll buy 12. I'll sell those. I'll get 24. Blah. Hindsight looking back, that is a slow road. But because my road was based in passion, it didn't matter that the time was longer. Because really my next phase is from making something. My next phase that I realized was, let me back up 1 second. When I was in high school, I thought it was so smart because I convinced my guidance counselor to sign off on the paperwork I didn't have to take a foreign language. Because I was like, I'm never going anywhere. I don't have the money to do anything. And single-handedly, probably one of the worst decisions I've ever made in my life. But I thought it was being smooth. The funny thing is later on, I realized my number one passion in life is traveling to foreign countries. So it is funny now that I look back on that was my angle, So, but starting UGP.
You were selling back then.
Well, I mean, I was the dude in my neighborhood. I had a 10-foot tall, 20-foot, 16-foot wide half pipe in my backyard. I had the trails, which are dirt jumps in the woods. I had trails in my street. I was the one trying to make go-karts and whatnot and selling plants door to door or whatever. Not really understanding why I was doing it. I wasn't trying to. Almost hate the word entrepreneur nowadays because it's just so cliche and kind of it encompasses too many things. I think I was just always trying to do something, and then thank God that something I discovered was BMX and skateboarding and street fashion and things like that. So the UGP thing was interesting. I mean, to think about starting a business before the internet, my father was an amazing dude, and he and I went down to the library and figured out microfiche. You guys ever use microfiche before?
That's predates
do
me.
you guys even know what it is?
I don't even know what it is.
It's crazy. You go to this little thing and you can pick different cities. If I remember correctly, you could pick different cities. You can put I might be wrong on my exact memory of this, but you pop in a cartridge and it's the phone book essentially of that area.
Got it.
So basically we go in there and I learned how to do our first trademarks ourselves. We went in there, went to the library, figured out. I did our very first trademarks personally with my father, and we submitted them. After I did the first one, USA, then I obviously had to hire a firm and help us later on. But I did that early on, like when I started moving forward, because I don't know if I'm going to jump out of sequence here, but like move forward to like the later 80s, earlier 90s, and start making clothing. So I go back to the microfiche and I find all they're called jobbers, where you can buy scrap materials, overruns from bigger companies. And I would go down to Hialeah, down to where Wynwood is now. It used to be called the Design District. And I would go buy all my bolts of fabric. I had no idea what I was doing. I'd go and touch the fabric, smell them, burn them. I saw these things that people would do. I had no idea about dye migration, shrinkage ratios, any of this stuff at the time. But I would just go down, I'd buy it, I'd bring it back up to Orlando. I found a guy that could do, it's called grading. So where you lay out all your fabric in piles and you lay your pattern on top of it and you cut it out with a big jigsaw, basically.
Oh, wow.
Well, I'm sorry, grading is actually sizing. And then you lay it on, get cut. I had to go to a place to get it graded, get the patterns, then go to a place to get it cut, then take it to a place to get sewn, then take it to another place to
All
get
different
embroidered.
places.
All different.
So you do a batch and then you take that batch somewhere else.
Yeah. And I learned all this before the internet and no mentors. Like I was just like
Hunting and pecking.
Hunting, pecking. Honestly, it's phenomenal.
And how old are you during that time?
Senior in high school.
This point, no. This
later
point,
on, right?
Like kind of going back, my first product I really made besides the T-shirts was number plates for the front of bikes. So I made a number plate, and it's so funny too because again learning about materials, substrates, cold weather, shattering, whatnot.
Wow.
So basically, I made
Hot weather fading.
hot weather fading. Honestly, it was a whole, and I didn't know any of this. I bought this plastic, and I took the plastic. Obviously, you can't see my hands, but I'm doing it like at a 4-foot sheet. I'm like, yeah, this looks good, awesome. I go get the plates screen printed by an outside screen printer, get a die cut, learn about die making, get a die done. All this. I'm still in high school during this, and I couldn't go for whatever reason. My friend went to this event in Montgomery, Alabama. All of a sudden, I get a phone call, a collect call. People even know what that is anymore, but I got a collect call from a payphone, calling me up going, holy shit, the number plates are breaking. They were shattering because of the cold weather.
Oh, wow.
No, number plates do not shatter. This is stupidity, you know what I mean, of not knowing, you know, and like, so I was shitting a brick, excuse me, you know, it's like, it was, you know, I was just freaking out, you know, I was like, oh my God, you know, and then again, though, I learned through that about plastics and whatnot and all that kind of stuff. And that was my first product.
Wow.
And I'll jump back up to the grading and material and stuff like that. But then in 11th grade, my mom and dad took me and my best friend, Willie Tremble. He's actually our customer service warranty department and stuff like that and everything now today. But him and I sat in the back seat of my mom's Delta Oldsmobile, taking riveting Velcro to these new number plates as we're driving up to Louisville, Kentucky.
That's awesome.
And I camped. My parents took off. They dropped us off, and I just camped in a tent for the whole weekend. And me and my friend, like half the people I still do business with,
wow,
I still am friends with because of that day. And I wandered. I met so many people, and then I basically met this guy named Charlie Danishek. Awesome guy. He's the guy that taught me about packaging and how to do things. And because I would just take the number plates. Actually, let me back up one second. So Mr. Danishek was standing on the thing. I walked up to him. Who knows what I said? He probably was like, what? But he was cool enough. And he's like, yeah, give me a call, blah, blah. And then he just started buying from me. I'm in high school. He's in Dayton, Ohio. Wow. They were the biggest BMX single speed distributor in America. Wow. Didn't really fully understand. He gave me so much advice. I used to take the zip ties and tape on the back of the number plate. I didn't understand. And he basically unlocked something to me today that still is there. Is I love packaging. I love details. And that came from that gentleman.
So let me ask you this. So back up, have you had conversations with him of like what drew him to you? Because you're just there just hustling, right? You're just grinding.
I think because he was also the same type of person. I'm still cool with him today, and I'm cool with his son. And then as years went on, their company got really big. They had a full complete bike brand. I used to help them with their trade show booths. I used to help them with like design aspects. I would sponsor their teams. Nice. So I actually became extremely good friends with his entire staff and his family. So I actually became even closer to them because at that point he was already way older than us, you know, and like, but he gave me, I always still attribute him to giving me my first real chance. Mm-hmm. You know, without his chance, I don't know because the number plates actually generated a decent amount of money. And then basically by the time I was in 12th grade, they had this thing called state plates because every state has its own racing region that you compete to get your number one title. Then you go to Ohio to compete against all the states. So by 12th grade, I think I printed 4 or 5 different states, their number plates. I custom did the art, made them, and that actually became a huge part of my income. Again, long journey. I would have to create art, print something for someone else, get the capital, create art, print my own goods, then basically sell those goods essentially to get my profit. So it was a really
and then turn the profit around, do it again.
And then do it again. Hopefully the profit started to not go back to here. It started going back to the brand, essentially. We'll talk more about that stuff as we get on. But so number plates were like my first real way of like making money. The T-shirts were the first thing we did, but the T-shirts actually kind of took a little bit longer. You know, because one of my friends, his name was Chris Moeller, and he started a bike brand called S&M Bicycles. And he started at the same time I did. He's in Huntington Beach, California. I'm here. We became friends. So inadvertently, I kind of decided I'll be the clothing, soft goods, pad guy, and he'll be the bike guy. You know, and I went on for a long time. I used to print all his T-shirts, do a lot of his artwork, you know, and like in his brand now, he has multiple brands and whatnot too. And we basically started around the same time.
It seems like you have some really deep and really great relationships in this business. I know that we've had conversations offline about the fact that, you know, one of the things about traveling is it seems like everywhere you go, it's like you have best friends there.
Well, that's why I thought that was normal. You know, that like I could probably go to any country, any city in the world, have a tight acquaintance or a really good friend. And I have a personal tour guide to every country I've ever been to, you know? So, I mean, and now it's kind of fun as you get older and you have wives and kids and whatnot, and all this kind of stuff. You're like, come on, we're going to go meet my friend over here. And they're like, oh, God, not one of your friends. Yeah, you know? Yeah. But you see things that you'll never, ever, ever see. And also, too, on top of that, there's not a better way to see any city in the world than on a bicycle. You see things that you'll never see, and you'll cover ground that you'll never be able to cover ground on feet or whatnot. So again, it kind of ties back to the travel aspect.
I hear that comment right there, and I think about how simple of a concept this was. It was out of love, but I mean, it's just like simple disciplines. You know, here's what it takes over and over and over and over and over again, morphing into something that was a sustainable business, a sustainable lifestyle. Continued to stay in the game, and just that comment right there. You know, you're 34 years in, you said, self-employed, and that statement right there was, there's no, I'm still pumping the fact that you can't beat what you can do on a bike.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, you've got so many different directions that the company has gone, but the simple thing is get on a bike and start pedaling and check out what you can check out.
I'm a firm believer the best meetings you can have in business is on a bicycle.
You always meet me down at the brewery or whatever with the bike.
Yeah, I mean, I'll ride my bike. I mean, honestly, I go jump on Orange Belt, jump on like Seminole Trail, jump on whatever, man, and just get and talk. Next thing you get 20 miles in, and you're like, "Oh man, that was a good talk," And
that's cool, man.
What a cool idea!
We a couple of guys in the office, we did a 100-mile bike ride in the West Orange Trail, and man, we covered everything in life, man. Like, exactly.
You guys rode to the beach. You guys are animals, man.
Well, maybe the last 25 miles I wasn't saying shit. I was just trying to say.
Last 20 miles, like, don't talk to me, man.
Literally, you're just thinking, all right, am I going to be the guy that quits first? Like, they're not going to quit. I'm not going to quit.
And ours was 72, and we were pretty toasted. You guys, you did it again after the three of us did it, and you went 100 miles.
Yeah, but just to that point, I just remember those conversations is one of my biggest highlights of the experience, and so that's cool.
I think more people should do that, man. Yeah. Being healthy, exercising while keeping your mind going, it definitely helps with creativity and in business, whatnot. If your brain is open.
That's awesome.
It's like
maybe we'll do a podcast on the bike, man.
That'd be sick. Just all four of us riding next to each other. Do a follow up to this. We're just ripping it on the trail.
We'll get windshields so it protects the mic.
Yeah. How many miles are we going? We're going 72
no,
against the wind.
We're 25.
We'll do 20.
Good 20.
20 is good. Yeah, man. We're not. We've already proven we can go 70.
20, your heart rate's going, and you feel nice, but you're not dead.
That's perfect.
At least you can burn off the beers you're about to drink afterwards.
There you go.
You're equal.
I like that.
So let me back up here and ask you this question, because I relate to the story about putting in the sweat equity for a little bit and not putting in the money because you don't have the money.
Yeah, I don't have the money.
I know that these two guys, we can relate to that. They just bootstrapped it. It's like, yeah, that sounds great, but all I got is a couple T-shirts, so I'm going to sell these and then use it and reinvest it, and that's kind of how we were in the beginning too. So. But we learned a lot of lessons doing it that way. We made a lot of mistakes, and they didn't cost us a lot, And then later on, you've already gone through these things. So, and then when you do have obviously some capital to be able to put behind, you've already been through the ringer a couple times. Yeah. So, I'd love to kind of talk to you. I know you're not a risk adverse guy, but you're a very calculated mitigator. And how much of that came from the early days of being able to maybe scribble outside the lines, or is that something that just maybe has always been there for you?
Man, it's funny because I wish I would have understood the theory of making money better when I was in my 20s. I just didn't really understand. I didn't understand money at all. So everything I was doing is really for the sense of creating and passion, being in a scenario that I loved so much. I don't think if I had the passion and if I would have understood money, I probably would have quit. But so that's what I mean by being delusional sometimes is actually a blessing, because sometimes my friends, I can't talk about it here, but my friends make fun of me a lot because of how slow I am sometimes to making certain decisions, but it's like, for me, it's like if I do an exercise all the time that when I'm working on a new project, I literally will think about it so much to the point that I can walk through almost like a 3D virtual view of the project.
In your mind's eye kind of thing.
In my mind. So by my mind, if I can walk through every aspect, and once I can fully see the walkthrough, then I'm ready to execute. The other thing too is my business strategy is that if it cannot succeed at worst case scenario, I'm not doing it. Because you are going to be at worst case scenario mostly. Because if you put in perspective, my perspective on business is 3 years, you're in business. Probably not profitable. 5, you should start hitting profitability. By 10, you've hit critical mass, and the word's getting out, and your business is truly popping. So, and I kind of tell everyone all the time that, hey, anything under 3 years, just keep your head down and keep hustling, because it's like you're fakely in business in the 3 years. It's really not business, because you're just trying to figure it the hell out.
You text that this morning that
I saw a Facebook post somebody put up, and it was that same sentiment, but the numbers that you just mentioned, I feel like that's exactly was our timeline. 3 years, you thought you'd be more ahead, but you're not. No. 5 years, I think, is when we took our first real living wage. of any kind.
5, 6, yeah.
And then, yeah, so it's like this, it's that whole cliche of an overnight success that took 10 years.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. There's no such thing as there of overnight success. There's tons of layers that you usually just don't see, and that's why people think it's overnight. And typically, if anyone rises too fast in business, I'm like, ooh. I go to people's businesses all the time, and I see they have a gigantic warehouse. I'm like, ooh. Oh my bad move,
I did this out of a dark room that really wasn't dark, and it would just fit me. Yeah.
I've heard past business people jokingly say that if you don't have bunk bed desk, then you've not maximized your space, like being sarcastic, but if you're not on top of each other.
So can you, when did you develop that?
Did you walk through here?
Yeah. I mean, it's key, man. I mean,
when did you develop that? Just along the way is just at a necessity of like, hey, look, like Brett said, hey, I don't have the money, so this is the only way I know, and it develops almost like as a skill over time. Because I remember my getting to know you and the Sparky's and the Sparky's warehouse, and even how you'd purchase inventory was a little bit counterintuitive to maybe how much you borrow versus how much you pay in cash. And, the smart person that knows finances and leverage and debt, you're kind of like, hey, man, I don't know, though, because
I'm a firm believer. If you think you can sell 100, buy 99. It's like, so when you come to my warehouse, like my own inventory is 100% paid for, and it's like, yeah, I could be way bigger, but I also could be way smaller if something goes wrong.
Sure.
And a long time ago, I met this guy, Bob. He was the president of NHS, which is the parent company of Santa Cruz Skateboards, independent trucks, etc. He was one of their original skate pros from the 70s. And he sat me down. He's an awesome guy, like super sick guy. This is probably in the 90s sometime, mid-90s, probably met him. And he told me the story about the tortoise and the hare. And basically that he considered themselves to be the tortoise. And Santa Cruz, if you guys know Santa Cruz, if you know anything about it, they're an awesome company. They've been around since the 70s, OJ Wheels, whatnot, all kinds of stuff. And I adopted his philosophy because I thought it made so much sense. I think probably through that 90s, it probably started taking the life lessons it's almost like what's that game you play when you go and hunt stuff down? A scavenger hunt.
Okay.
It was almost like probably, as we're sitting here talking, this is not a well thought out point here, but it's like from me being 16 to probably in my late 20s, it was a scavenger hunt of information.
Right.
And it's like someone keep me little clues.
Going here, learning this, thing going there.
Yeah, breadcrumbs all the way. And then finally going, oh shit, I think I have enough crumbs to actually make a loaf of bread, Okay, cool. Now let's go to the next thing, And I think that's where probably talking to Bob from NHS, I was like, oh shoot, man, like you don't have to be. And now anytime someone pops up in my business, if I see people I'm competing against, like my old business, UGP, from the day I started it to the day I sold it on its 19th year anniversary. When I sold it, over that point, I probably had 10 solid competitors that would come into the market. And you would see them. They would pop super hard. But then if you look at my trajectory, hey, there's downs, there's ups, down. But essentially, it was a real slow uptick over the 19 years. But these people, when you look at, they came, they gone, they came, they gone, they came, they gone.
Wow.
So again, I would rather have something really cool for a long term than have something really cool for a short term.
And it makes me think of the here today, gone tomorrow companies. They're in for a money grab and then they're gone, right? And
sometimes strategically, maybe that's a good idea.
That's what I'm saying, right? But I'm just saying versus the guy that says, "Man, I'm going to just build this through." And I hear your question, Tay, about the early days of the slow and steady, and what I think it at least my perspective of hearing that is it just taught you certain disciplines that you still adhere to today. So it's like, there's not going to be a quantum leap to me getting to where I am 34 years later, nor am I even looking for that. Yeah. So it's like, and I think that's a strong message to anybody listening. It's right. Whether you're 1 year in, 2 years in, 3 years in, which by the way, I completely agree with, right? You don't own a business, you own a job.
Yep.
And hopefully you're a good marketer along the way, because that's really the only thing. But it's like those early years of banging your head, not making any money. And then, you look up 5 years later, it's like, man, I've got a little bit I've got a little momentum here, but it's been through just a calculated, slow and steady mentality. And I discipline is what when I look at you, I see discipline. You wouldn't, I feel like when you explain it, you're trying to explain it as though you weren't that savvy but I think it's dumb like a fox kind of thing, right? It's like, well, yeah, I have an instinct here as to why I believe what I believe and why I act in that regard versus the guy that comes in, knows everything, and they go like this, but then they go like that.
100% agree with that.
You're aware of the downside. It sounds like too. That's a big part of your philosophy.
Probably I'm just afraid of losing the passion-driven aspect of what I do. You know,
Yeah, because you get to focus on the fun part of your business, right? You're like, let me, I don't want to try to, right? Try to. Yeah, that's a good point. But every time if you stay outside those boundaries, that probably puts extra stress to not focus on the creative part of your business.
Well, honestly, one of the things I always see when I run into people that are business, I had this guy just came into my office one time and he was being an intern for IT, and we're like, one of our questions, I was like, well, hey, what do you want to do? What do you want to do next? What's your goal? And the guy goes, I want to be a CEO or a CFO, CEO. I was like, well, you can't be a CEO. A CEO it's fragments of a journey and lessons you've learned to where all of a sudden you can make decisions in a rapid order. You can't jump from A all the way to Z, and now sitting here, I was like, man, so you're only thinking about dollars and cents and not actually the grind to get to the place where you can be in charge. Because to be in charge without back experience, your life is gonna suck, man. I mean, suck. You know, and
so that's a good idea. So this is a question that I wanted to ask because it's been fresh in my mind. I want to come back to the 5-year mark because I have a story for that. What is first of all, I'm going to put you on the hot seat here.
Go for it.
Number one, what is the best piece of advice you've ever been given that you still adhere to today? And then what is the worst piece of advice that somebody gave you that you go, God bless, I'm glad I didn't listen to that. Or maybe I did listen to it and I learned the hard way.
Man, those are good questions. That's a hard one, man. I can't say what the worst was in a sentence form, but I think it always addresses the idea of leveraging. Mm-hmm. I hate leverage. I don't leverage. I'm not into that. So I would have to assume that if it's bad advice, that would be it. Probably the best advice probably is the tortoise and the hare, man, that like you don't got to be there tomorrow to enjoy the journey. You know what I mean? It's like, honestly, what is that saying about the journey is the best part of the
I was just going to say, people think there's a pot of gold. You know, everybody's after the pot of gold, and we're learning that now. You miss, you know, the journey is in the rainbow. The journey is or the prize is in the journey. You get to the pot of gold, you're like,
it just moves.
Yeah,
it's funny though, because I have no answer to this point I'm about to make, but I've realized lately that I despise finish lines, and I cannot figure out why this.
Unless you're racing a BMX bike.
Sure. But it's like, I feel like every day I'm like, oh man, if I just get to here, this will feel like this. Oh, if I just get to here, this will feel like this.
Man.
But I realize that, but I don't understand what it means. I've just been asking myself this for like 2 weeks. Like, I don't really like finish lines. I'm sick and tired of having to because it really should be a constant stream of consciousness in a sense, like the journey that you're doing, your business that you're doing. It's the breadcrumbs, you know, like ting, 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 ting. It should just be fluid. But these finish lines I don't like because it feels like you're setting yourself up for a scenario that's not truly actually done. You know, it's like God,
I had this question. We can go into Brett's personal life here for a second. I just had this conversation this morning because I keep telling my wife, right after this.
Yeah.
Well, right after this. Well, right after this. You know, it's right after this. It's just this office, and then that's this project, and then this project.
I don't know what the answer is.
And she looks at me and she goes, "You always say that," and I'm like, "Damn, dude, I'm not trying to be that guy."
I don't think it's that guy. I assume it's a trained thought process. I don't think a finish line or grabbing that next breadcrumb and thinking you're done is a natural thing. I don't think. I think natural is more fluid. I believe, but everything I'm staying around, I don't have a clue what I'm talking about. This has just been a thought for the past 2 weeks. I'm going, man, I'm over this because I don't like how it makes me feel.
Well, I think it's a rich topic, right? Rich subject matter because I mean, you immediately related to it. You're talking about. I mean, you know what I believe? I believe it's been put to the forefront in the last 2 weeks. I think it's something that you've maybe subconsciously lived by through the whole life cycle of the business because it's consistent with your story.
Yeah.
It's consistent with 8th grade to 11th grade. That's very consistent. There was no finish line, right? If there was, you could have made $500 in your 8th year, right? It was like, I'm just going to hustle. I'm not looking at the money. You said I'm not money driven. And you're not looking at the 500. You know the motorcycle you want to buy is $500, but it's like it's 8th grade. It's like if I want the bike that bad, I'll make the $500 in 8th grade. But it took you till 11th or 12th. You said So I think it's a subconscious thing that you just kind of have grown more aware of.
That's an interesting thought process.
I think so too. I'm fascinated with it. It's funny. So if you hear me like smiling or going throughout this whole podcast, the things that you've been thinking of the last 2 weeks are precisely the conversations that I feel like we've had. And I remember starting the business and having a finish line and being like, oh, if we just get to 1 million in premium,
No doubt,
you know,
dude.
and then it moves, and then you get to exactly your 10-year goal, right? And then it moves again, but you're thinking the next move, it's not going to move, but it keeps freaking moving. And then you come back to you and your wife's conversation. I was telling you on the way in here, where you're like, but you also have this delusion of, well, that'll be the last one. But then a good opportunity comes up. And we were talking about how you filter opportunities and how you talked about decision making. I think that's a skill of an operator and an entrepreneur, is to say there's so much opportunity. It's almost like there's too much opportunity. I think one of the skills is, which ones do I pursue? Which ones fit my eye? Which ones, all that stuff. And I know we can relate to that. So I'd like you to talk about that.
It's funny because my friend Alfredo Mancuso, he's this guy from California, awesome guy. And like a couple years ago, he's younger and he's hustles hard. He's got a great hustle. And I go, hey, man, I think the number one thing in life that we should all be judged on is what we say no to, not what we say yes to. Mm-hmm. Because unfortunately, one life lesson I learned is just because you can doesn't mean you should. Because I always had the philosophy that I can do it. I'm going for it. So I was like, I made a snowboard clothing brand in Orlando, Florida in the mid-90s. Right.
Forgot about that.
It worked. Yeah. It was working kind of, but I had to make a decision. But again, I still didn't learn my lesson at that moment. I still kept one thing I'll jump to modern day now and go back, but it's like one thing I've learned lately is like my friends are kind of making fun of me because they say that if you want to talk to me, you have to set a meeting. I'm like, no, actually what it is I set boundaries and I only talk at certain times. So if you want to talk, I'm not going to talk instantaneously just because I have an open window. I'm going to put it on this time, and that's when we're going to talk.
Just because I can doesn't mean I should.
Yeah, and boundaries too. I'm not going to talk after 5 p.m. If you want to talk to me for a long time, call me at 6 a.m. We'll talk a ton. It's like, or at 4 o'clock, here it is, or whatever it may be. But I had to explain it to one of my friends the other day, and it totally hit him, and he understood, because I don't want to be on 24/7, nor do I want to be forced into being on when I don't necessarily feel like I should be on.
Well, I know my wife's going to be listening to this podcast when it comes out. I got to take some notes, man.
Yeah. I think it's important, man, because just because business is our passion, it is our life, because that's another one thing is I hate when people say, don't take it personal, it's just business. I'm like, screw off, man. If your business isn't personal, then you're not the person I want to work with.
Amen.
It's like screw the F off.
And that's why you can go to every country and have somebody that's going to host you and see you, because it's you're a relationship guy. Absolutely. And that's why I've loved our friendship over the last couple of years. It's like,
I'm a firm believer. I will take the short end of the stick in a relationship, but I'll only do it fractionally amount of the times. I'm not putting an amount of times but if your person always is taking, then we're not going to be friends, or do business.
Amen to that, man.
But yeah, so kind of going back, I guess, to.
Well, what I wanted to do, a couple things. So I want to can you give me a quick overview of, after after the t-shirts, after the bike numbers, all that stuff, Shadow comes into perspective. Then you got Sabrosa's right after that. And then I give me kind of an overview of that, but I really, if you wouldn't mind, your story about the trading company, and that story is one of the most unbelievable ones. So I wanted to
I'll go real quick from UGP all the way through to Sabrosa. So it's like with UGP, around its 16th year, I was starting to make shoes, because we were making underwear, jackets, jeans, socks, girls' clothing. I was making shoes now, and I was learning about shoes. So I flew to China and went to like a handful of shoe factories, and I completely learned how to manufacture shoes. So then when I came back, I was like, I want to start a new brand. So I'm either going to start a shoe brand or a parts company. So then I took, at the time, this is by this point, it's probably about 2000, I think. So I didn't know if we wanted to do Asia or do USA. So I took one product and I went to the oldest grip manufacturer in America. It was actually in Tampa, just by chance. And I did an analysis of this one product called a grip for your handlebars. And I did an analysis, and basically by the end of it was night and day, either let me back 1 second, like shoes or parts. I realized I already had, at that point, I probably had like a dealer base of 1,000 dealers or something domestically, plus 10 or 12 international distributors. I was like, I already have these distributors. I already buy bike things. If I do shoes, it's tons of SKUs, models, whatnot, sizes. I was like, okay, I'm not going to do shoes. I'm going to do parts. So then I decided to do parts. And through the parts thing, it kind of probably leads into the one story. So I was already selling UGP clothing into Taiwan. And so I had this guy that he worked for a company called Westmill. It was his own brand and distributed clothing all throughout Taiwan, the island. So I convinced him, if I fly in, would you just drive me down to the city called Taichung? That's where all the bicycle manufacturing is, about a 3-hour drive back to maybe 4 hours back then. And I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't know who I was going to. But the funny part of the story is my passport got washed right before I left. And I made it from America to Japan, hung on Japan for X amount of days, and went from there into Taiwan. At the time, the Taiwan airport looked insane. It was like exposed bricks. It looked almost like an old high school, like from like the 60s or something. It looked bad, and I was nervous as hell. I was like, so I go in, I show up to the counter, and I hand the gentleman my passport, and I hear he looks at it, and he says something in Chinese and Mandarin. And I was like, oh my God. And all of a sudden, this older dude comes walking up with a trillion medals all over his military outfit. And I was like, oh my God, and he picks up my passport. And all I understood was the word anthrax. That's all I heard. This is right after 9/11, not too long after that whole time period, and I was like, I literally, in my life, have never been so nervous. I felt like a Scooby-Doo cartoon. I felt like I just started shaking everywhere. And it felt like hours, but it's probably 15 minutes max. The gentleman says, go on your way, go into the country. And there I was. That was my introduction. At one moment, I was like, I don't want to do this company. I'm ready to leave. Just let me go. Anyway, so I pop into the country. We go down. I start meeting some people. And then that kind of basically taught me my beginning stages of how I was going to start this parts company. And that got launched in 2002, so do you want me to go into the marketing stuff or kind of talk about the brands first and go into how we launched
This is
stuff?
amazing. Go wherever you want to go.
Well, why fly there? Why do that? What was the pull? You already had everything set up basically, right?
No, because honestly, this, if you're going to do something, you have to immerse yourself in it. And the one thing I love about myself is I can talk to you almost about any kind of manufacturing. I can talk to you about design. I can talk about, I know how to manufacture anything. I might physically not be able to do personally myself, but in order to be able to design correctly, you have to understand the process, because sometimes through processes, you can learn really cool new ways to flip the script and then create something that's totally different on the cheap too. Because that's one thing that I think I've been blessed on is I know how to take $1 and I make it 10. I can stretch it so far, and that's why I was able to go from $500 to multi-millions now. It's because of that whole mindset. So going there, I learned about all the machines, all the stuff, the lasing, engraving, how much molds cost, this, that, etc. And then I could come out with a brand that could be more affordable.
Let me ask you what you just said, $500 to multi-million. Did you ever, when you were getting started in business, receive big loan, or do you really was when you say 500 into what has now, have you kind of looked at that 500 is I turn that 500 to 1,000 and 1,500, reinvest.
Literally the 500 turned into millions. Wow. I only took one loan out in 1992 for $20,000 and we didn't know what the heck we were doing. I paid bills, did stuff, whatnot. Yeah.
In a business with all that inventory, all that manufacturing, you took out one loan in 1992.
Yep. Self-finance. Even today, I'm still self-finance. Yes, I have a line of credit for $1 million, but I barely use it. It's there just in case.
Which has got to be crazy in your industry, right?
Well, if I lived like most entrepreneurs do, and I bought Lamborghinis and whatnot, all this kind of stuff, I wouldn't be self-financed. But I personally I don't want to be indebted to anyone. I live my life on my own terms, and besides the terms of my staff and my employee and my friends, that obviously directs what I'm going to be and do, but it's on a day-to-day. No one can tell me what to do.
And that's one thing that's what strikes me about you with how you've built your businesses or what businesses you go down, because it seems like you start with the passion, you start with the life design, and then you see if that business can fit into that. Or not getting into something that's going to take away from that. And maybe that's at this point, or maybe that's always been this way, because you're like, look, I just don't want to lose the passion. I love this, and I don't want to lose that.
Probably the only thing I do leverage, probably lied a minute ago, the only thing I do leverage is my business to business. I'm a firm believer of the full food chain. You know, like I like having businesses that relate to each other and that create an overall story or profitability or control. You know, like control's huge too. You know, I mean, it's not control from a dictator standpoint, but control of, you know, this is how our brands are going to survive, not even prosper, but survive. You know, it's like it's making sure that it can.
Wow. I hear all this, and that was a great point, Ted. I think integration, man. I think, you know, one needs to integrate with another. The business needs to integrate with life. The lifestyle integrates back into the business. The team integrates into the decisions that are made. Mm-hmm. And again, I say discipline, man. It's like it just seems like such a simple strategy. And honestly,
until you have to do it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, no doubt. But it's like
I'm a firm believer that any project you're going to do, this is what I do. That's why delusional again is that what I do is I oversimplify the path in front to the point that most people are, you're delusional. But if you oversimplify it, you know what the path's going to be. But if you oversimplify it as you're going through it, it doesn't seem as intense because you're a bit delusional as you're just knocking down the walls. You know, it's like not really thinking about the next wall as much, even though you know there's going to be another wall right behind it. You know, it's
how do you manage all of these? You know, you have all these different brands, all these different verticals that all do integrate. You serve the same customer to an extent, you know, right? Totally but how do you, you know, you don't necessarily have, you know, a business partner. You have partners, but how is it? You know, how do you structure your day? How do you structure your week? Do you have certain philosophies that you abide by? Do you give certain attention to certain brands at different time? Like, if I'm listening to this, I'm going, man, I've got my business, and that's hard enough as it is. Imagine running 4 of them at the same time, you know?
I mean, it's funny because that's my one thing that I always am fascinated by is when I'm looking at people, how do you scale your employees to 500 employees, 1,000 employees, 5,000 employees? Like, how does that happen, you know? But I think the simplicity aspect of it is project management software, super key. Don't even know how I did it before that. And job descriptions and job titles. You know, I think once you put everything in place, then it comes to just delegate, man. Like trust people, know that your most people's 100% is your 99. You know, like so. The carrot and the carrot is not real. Like perfection is not real. It's just a carrot, man, that you're chasing nonstop. And once you realize that there is no such thing as perfection, then actually it's easier to delegate.
So, you know, so do you have specific people who manage in each brand? Are they all integrated together? Do you have them working together? Are they working kind of solo until you meet?
It depends. I mean, I'm still learning this too. There's a lot of things like we were talking about earlier, Ted, when it came in. It's just scaling of employees and how to get the most of them without making their life suck. Because if their life sucks, your life sucks.
Right.
You know, so it's like, how do you scale employees? And that's one of my hardest things. But what I've tried to do with my business model is I have a back end that is shared. There's middle sections of the company through creative and purchasing and product development that are shared, but also separate. Like social, whatnot, branding is separate. Our art directors are separate.
Got it.
Sales is similar. Finance is similar.
Got it.
You know, share.
So there's some overlap. So they have the same functions, but they're working with the multiple brands.
Absolutely.
Okay. My last question, if somebody's listening to this, what project management software do you use?
We use Basecamp. There's lots of them out here. I've heard about a lot of really great ones. One thing is we've been in Basecamp for so long now that to switch, it would be insane. You know, it's like but I don't even know how we did it before. I can't remember. It's funny how technology does that. It erases your brain and how you actually functioned before.
Did you have to slow down to speed up with that? Is that a you know, going from somebody who runs it a certain way to go, here you go, here's the software. You got to learn the software. Everybody's got to be on the page. Everybody's got to put these inputs. You got to figure out who's going to do what. Yeah. Was that a learning curve in the beginning, or was it something that was pretty easy to do?
It's just like anytime you put software in, usually your crew has a problem with the adaptation, me included. You know, it's like I force myself to do certain things, but I'm a creature of habit, man. Like if you watch me, but okay, I know exactly what he's gonna do next. You know, but I am a creature of habit, so I do understand the troubles when you switch softwares and switch processes and whatnot and things like that. But ultimately over time, everyone's on board. I think the number one thing we've learned is training, and we're not the best yet at that. And that's the one thing we're trying to help build confidence in people and realize that training doesn't happen with one session. It has to be multiple sessions to make people feel comfortable. So you can't just throw them out on their own.
Man, I have a question when you're parlaying on all your brands and you look at that, the entrepreneur, even though you don't like. By the way, what would you rather use the word substitute entrepreneur with one other word?
That's a good question.
Is there a better one that you like to refer to?
Grinder.
HMIFC. No, I don't
like it.
I don't really. My name's Ron. It's like I'm a habitual hustler. I don't know.
I think grinder.
Yeah,
just a friggin' grinder.
And I would use maybe problem solver.
Yeah.
But even then, so anyway, that's side note. But
cool question.
yeah, and in the same thought, I look at all these brands and I see almost like this serial entrepreneur that's doing this. And I think a lot of people that are entrepreneurs, there's this different distraction of too much going on, and then there's this. You got to have multiple balls juggling at some extent. But I look at all these brands, I say, how important is it for you over the years? Did you always have like a core business and then that maybe made the most money, that would drive your brand, and then you would open these other projects? And how did you handle that from all, and now you look at it and go, geez, that's a lot of brands, but they all seem to complement each other. How do you handle that?
Every brand has overlap, but every brand has a unique category that it does, and that's what makes it. And I realized, like when I started Shadow with UGP, honestly, I had no clue what was the bestseller, not the bestseller, what was actually driving my I just didn't have that thought process yet. But with Shadow, my thought is that I knew we were going to be small, so my strategy was go wide with my SKU counts because I knew I wasn't going to be deep by each category. As I grew, that became a really difficult scenario to stay on top of because you have so many products. Yeah. But it was part of our strategy. Also, too, I knew that most companies started with one product and not a collection of products. So part of my profitability strategy was I'm going to go for a wide so then I can actually make more money quicker, So through that, though, one of our number one products, which was our Shadow interlock chain, which Byron Anderson, our product director, actually came up with this idea. We invented this product and it changed chains, and that is our hero product for sure.
So that's your driver over the years. That product really drove that.
Well, that drives unit sales for sure, profitability, but it also establishes us in a league different than everyone else. Because I feel as a business, if you don't have one category, one element that makes you better than everyone else, you have to be able to argue the point. If you don't have that one point, you're really not a competitor. You're a commodity, and I don't want to be a commodity. Commodity is difficult. I do not want to play Walmart game. No, not tearing on Walmart, but I don't want to play the pennies on the dollar game. It's just when mistakes happen, you're screwed.
Tough game.
It's like, so I don't play that game.
Yeah. And what's interesting about that is you mentioned, hi, I'm Ron. And it was like we all laughed, but I'm thinking about in this world of people establishing personal brands. And I think about you as a relationship guy, and you can go to any country in the world and have a couch to sleep on or a bed to sleep in. And you look at it to say, hey, it's not just business and it's not just personal, they're integrated. I view that as a personal brand. You view yourself 100%. As a personal brand. In those relationships, your word matters. So it's a little bit ahead of its time where now, entrepreneurs coming into the space looking to build personal brands. And I look at that, and all personal brand is a reputation. All personal brand is how you think and how you handle yourself. And I think
personal brand should be graphic design. It should be years of hustle and proof of concept.
Sure.
It's like, to me, I take a lot of pride that I'm not a liar. I'm not perfect. I make lots of mistakes, but you could give me your wallet and I would never open it.
Sure.
You know what I mean? I take pride in that, my business strategies. And I do believe that is why people trust me. If I call them and say, hey, I need this or I need that, most people try their hardest to help,
That may be an underrated part of your story. To do that over 35 years, to have all the people that want.
People don't like me. I made mistakes, or people's perceptions of a decision I had to make might have been a hard decision. They might not like me till this day because of that decision. That used to hurt more. It always still hurts, but at this day, I'm like, hey, man, that's your perception. If that's the journey you want to take and your energy, then good for you, man. But this is my path, and I'm sorry, but this is my path. I have to make the decision for the whole. I'm a firm believer too. Don't judge on the sum, judge on the whole. It's like
explain that.
Meaning everyone does something good once, everyone does something bad once. or multiple times, whatever. But judge me on my whole, not a part of the sum.
Got it.
You know, because it's like, that's why this cancel culture and things, I don't want to get political at all, but I don't believe in that. I think everyone makes mistakes, and now racist, but that's not what I'm talking about, you know, at all. But I'm saying in business, you know, like you might make mistakes. The thing is, how do you own the mistake and then just crush it with exactness, you know, like this is it, you know, and then move on, you know what I mean? It's like,
well, there's a sense of humility there too. It's like for anyone to judge on the sum, you could be upset at the sum.
Yeah,
it's fine, it's
absolutely.
okay. But from a passing judgment of who somebody is or what a brand is or a business, it's like, let's look at the whole here for a second.
well,
That's not,
and everything's
that's not fair.
connectivity points. Everything's a connectivity point, you know? So if you're going through and just picking one point in these thousands of connectivity points that you have, and you're picking one point, you're not looking at the ones before and the ones after, you're not seeing the full picture.
Yep.
You know, so that to me, I'm huge in that. I'm human. I don't always follow my own advice, but that is an important thing that I try to analyze.
I think
you know?
everybody can relate to that to some extent. You know, you're sometimes you're on the receiving end, and a lot of times you're on the I don't want to say the word passing judgment end, but you're the one that's has the perception of somebody, something, some business. So, and I mean, no, we're no different. I mean, if you have any type of vendors or partners or partnerships or distributor or anybody like that, right? There's just so much flow going back and forth all the time. You know, staff, boss relationships. I think that's applicable everywhere. You know, that's just a people game, right?
But it's something that people don't think about a lot, especially as like you're talking about first level managers or owners and whatnot. Your decisions a lot of times are not going to be the consensus.
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes you've seen things or you know things, and so you're like, hey, I got to try. Or sometimes as an owner, you're just like, I got to roll the dice right now and just see what happens. You know, it's like starting the Rocksteady Corporation. You know, like it was scary as hell. When I started, Rocksteady is a trading company, and in Taiwan, in Taichung. When all of a sudden one day we're like, my product director, Greg Lanthorn's awesome guy. First BMX pro I ever sponsored. I met him at 14 years old. He's now my product director. I've known him forever. He was in Taiwan. At the same time, we got an email from a Chinese retail store. And this regional was like, hey, we want to carry more of your stuff. It went really good. But at that moment, we were not allowing our products being sold into China because it's just so common. It was just, there's too much craziness. So we're like,
Can't
no.
imagine.
So we're like, no, we don't want to sell. Then like all of a sudden, Greg was in this warehouse of our past trading company, and he at the same time saw this pallet of all this product that was ours.
Your product.
Yeah, with this name on it of that same dealer. We're like, ooh, okay. So Greg, we're talking. At the same time, I found literally the same week I found my dad was dying of stage 4 cancer. So I was like, you know what? I'll be back. I'll think about this. So I ended up thinking about it. And in the meantime, my really good friend and now my partner in Rocksteady, his name is Stephen Liu, he quit working for that company. I was like, whoa. I call him. I convinced him that this is the right idea for his future. And him and I started Rocksteady Supply Co. So at the time, it took us a while to get it go. It took us about a year. Like, dude, I learned everything about Taiwanese law, American law, like how to, because it's complex, it's gnarly.
So let me just give context real quick so I don't lose the story and for the people listening at home. So you said no to distributing the product in China.
Yes.
But then you find out that they are distributing
That our
the
trading
product.
company was essentially, maybe not factually, but was making 20% more of everything we were making, not telling us, taking the 20% and then shipping it to their stores and then to other stores in China.
Which
without
obviously is
asking us.
against, you know.
Everything. What's against ethics is against
Right.
relationships, business. It's illegal,
Right.
you know.
And at that point, I mean, you don't really have an option. Like, that's your trading company. Without them, you can't really operate to some extent.
They control, especially from there. They were a really old company, maybe 50-something years old. They were old school.
What's a trading company?
Trading companies basically are a company that receives your orders, does your product development, does your QC, does your logistics, because, you know, like, say for Rocksteady, we deal with like over 40 different factories.
It's different than your distributor?
Distribution is logistics. A part of this is a form of logistics, but mainly what it does, it's your eyes and ears on the ground, and it has all the relationship with all the factories.
Got it. To get the product.
To get the product. So, like, you know, like, for example, if we wanted grips, a helmet, and a pair of bars, well, they're all different factories. The trading company will go get them, negotiate with them, get everything, and then the language barrier.
Yeah.
Everything comes back into the warehouse, it gets split up, and then we ship it out to as many countries you sell to.
So Rocksteady, would be fair to say that was never something that you were penciling on your whiteboard at home. That was something that came out of necessity because someone put you in a tough spot and you kind of had to figure out another way to go.
I had a realization through that product that you can never control the Z if you don't control the A. Meaning, if you don't control your manufacturing and logistics, whatever Z might be in your future, you'll never have control of it if you don't control the beginning point. So basically, through that process, I was like, "Oh shit, man, I'm not your boy. I don't work for you," and I got mad. And then I learned an important thing too. Is like I was like, I'm very transparent. I'm very honest. And when I went through this whole process and I figured it all out, I actually flew to Taiwan. Went to that trading company. I don't know why. I'll never do this again in my life. And I went to them and told them that I was leaving. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to spit on there, but I told them I was leaving. I was like, dumbest move I've ever done. It just opened up for them to have strategy now to try to use it against me. And they tried to get some of the factories to not work with us.
Well, how much is that just you've been wanting to tell them that and you've been like, how much, and if we're being transparent, that's probably driven by like, you're upset, right? You're
honestly, I'm too honest and I'm too straightforward.
It was an essence thing. You're just like, I don't trust.
Did you feel like you owed that? Did you feel like you owed it to him?
I don't know, but I'll tell you right now, I'll never do it again.
Interesting.
I'll never be that transparent in business in an exit point, because it just wasn't, I just screwed myself and it made it really hard. The point was too, is that this move was a double down. One of the only times I've ever doubled down. And I totally doubled down. If this wouldn't have succeeded, I would have lost everything I own.
Right. Because you can't get everything, right? And then you'd have a certain amount of downtime and then see you later.
Everything. Because I had, $100,000 in molds that this other trading company was controlling. And I lost $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 in molds at the time because some factories didn't want to work with us. But the funny flip part of it is now Rocksteady is the biggest trading company in Taiwan for BMX bicycles. Oh. We probably deal with 10 different companies. We're doing automotive parts now for four-wheel drive trucks. We're doing motorcycle parts. We're doing all kinds of stuff. And now we're the biggest trading company in Taiwan.
So you didn't go ahead.
When now you have people coming to you from all different verticals, and now you're servicing different verticals based upon what you built to just support your current business.
It was interesting because I had two choices when you go into Taiwan. You can set up a satellite office that defers all your taxes to America, or you can set up a corporate office in there to where you then pay your taxes and have it all there, and then you can actually manage all the brands. I made an early decision that my partner and we've been working together for a long time, and he's a phenomenal guy, super smart, attention to detail. But Greg and I, taught him all the small details of a brand and the details to look for, customer service, all this kind of stuff over our 10 years of working together. So when we came in, I was like, man, Steve and I were like, let's do a trading company because we know what we've developed here. We could actually help other people. So I service a lot of my competitors, and the one thing about my business is I don't know anything about what they develop, what their POs look like. All I know is the end of year numbers, and I'm there to help with customer service, design advice, whatnot. And I give very transparent information to my competitors that they can use against me, but it's the right thing to do. Because I started this business to be its own business, not to help build this business in a sense.
Man, and all that started by you getting on a plane. And going to Taiwan, having a
washed out passport.
Well, having a washed out passport with a coincidence who drove you 3.5, 4 hours, in which you almost got pulled away because of an anthrax scare.
What is a washed out passport?
He washed it.
It was all jacked. It looked.
I don't really. So you couldn't really see.
He barely got through.
That's why the flag went up. Who's this guy?
It's like they were.
So do you use that story that Brett's describing? You didn't know the language, right?
No, I still don't.
Jeez.
I'm horrible. I can barely speak English.
So you went to that's insane, man. But do you use that story when with Rocksteady when you're bringing on new partners to like, hey, this is kind of what happened, like that brutal experience to basically?
I don't really tell too many people. I mean, I think it's a fascinating story, and I love the idea of like just diving in and saying, hey, how am I going to figure this out? And again, going back to your point of relationships, my partner, we have a phenomenal relationship. We're like great friends, and we both hustle hard. He's a phenomenal hustler, and his family, his wife, kids, they moved from Taipei, which is the capital, down to Taichung. Moved. It also, his family still lives in Taipei, and now we've created this multi-million-dollar company. That's like.
That's
insane,
amazing. And how many entrepreneurs or creators or just you put whatever label on you want it, develop this stuff on accident, right? Like so many times we think that like people open businesses because like it's their dream, but a lot of times this stuff happens by accident. It's like it just kind of happened. I was put in the situation, I had to make a decision. It was a really tough deal, and I went to zero, and because I had to, and did this, and then all of a sudden you look up and you're like, man, like, wow, this is unbelievable. It's
Holy
crazy.
crap, it worked.
It worked. I didn't know what worked meant.
Yeah, So, absolutely.
I just love that story because it's such a, I don't even know if I could say I can relate to it, but it makes me, it always has stuck out to me to say, man, like when one door closes, the other one doesn't open. You have to go open it yourself. Yeah. Like you got to find one that's unlocked and then open it. It's not like, that cliche saying is like, it's almost like, well, one door closes and then you're just waiting for something to open. It's like, no, you just got to go find an unlocked door and then kick that thing down,
It's funny because that's what is it, analogy or whatever, the door analogy, whatever, is I tell all my new employees or new riders or whatnot, I'm like, hey, dude, the door's cracked open. It's how far do you want to kick it open now? So it's like, it's up to you now. Door's up. It's open. I don't open it all the way for you.
There was a guy I used to know. He said, the door's ajar. Are you man enough to go kick it in?
There you go.
Yeah. You're like, oh man, it's, get it. How far do you want to squeeze in really tight, or do you want to walk real freely through it and be kicking some butt? Let's do this.
One thing you said a minute ago, I want to draw attention back to, man. And every time around you, your energy is amazing. You used the word energy a bit ago. So I use that to ask this question. Do you still love what you do?
100%. I mean, some parts more than others.
I think I know that answer, but I think I can feel your answer. Yeah. And I think the listener will be able to feel your answer.
The thing is with me, I'm not a businessman. I'm a creator.
You're Ron.
Yeah, I'm not a businessman. I'm not a numbers guy. I'm not the smartest dude in the room, but I love making things. I love making things. It doesn't matter what if interior design, if it's architecture, if it's like flow of a trade show booth, if it's a T-shirt, I don't care. I love making things.
That's awesome.
My one thing in life is I wish I could just have a numbers guy come in and be like my, CFO.
Confidant.
And say, hey, do all this for me and let me just go buck wild. And obviously that's like one of my dreams.
That's a plug right there. If you're listening to this, you might want to get in touch with Ronnie.
Where do they send their resumes, Ron?
Well, if you're smart enough to be a CFO, you're far enough to find me.
There you go.
Wow, I like that.
Well, and I want to be respectful of your time, and I'm so happy that you asked that, because my last question to kind of wrap this up, to kind of solidify, where you're at in your journey, where companies in your journey. I just wanted to ask you, what are you most excited about right now with everything that you have going on? It feels like you've just got so much momentum. You've built this reputation. It's built on a rock. You're considered. You have so much respect in the industry. You've accomplished, so much. There's probably as much that you sat out to or more. And you're in this game now, and you're doing it because you love it, and you have all these different things. Like what juices you, man? Like what are you so excited about right now?
Thing as it was when I was 16, making things, traveling. Granted, past 2 years, no traveling, but traveling. We have our own flagship store opening up called Juvie Hall. That's gonna be pretty cool.
Where's that gonna open?
Right across the street from my office. We're really going for this experience-based thing. I've been doing so much research and history. I want to present our history and place and what we do. And being in Orlando, everyone comes to Orlando, but. Yeah, my goal, honestly, is delegation and moving my job over the next 5 years into a position of more mentoring and more higher level, and getting my team the ability to make all the decisions how they want to see it being made. And I just want to be more higher up. So
Chairman of the board.
Yeah, when I was little, when I was young, actually teenagers, probably late teenagers, I thought 25 was the end of the road. We used to call that guy that would come up. We used to call him that guy because he was 25 or older, And I'm like, damn it, dude, I'm double the age of that guy now. So, I kind of set goals of like 25 to buy a house. I set 50, 55 to semi-retire. So I got 4 years. My goal right now is just to try to get everything so structured and give everyone ownership and whatnot, so then I can kind of steadily just get into more of like a development only stage, So
that's cool, man.
I don't want to quit doing what I do, but I definitely want to change my grind. You know,
Be able to
using your
focus
words, you
more
know,
on
it's
the
like-
stuff that you really, really, really love,
Yeah,
right?
so I hope that's possible. So that's my goal.
That's such a cool goal, man.
It's great. Well, I mean, that's a clue. Like, what are you most excited about? Exactly what I was excited about.
At 16 years old, man. I mean, it's a huge clue.
I mean,
it's just such a
if
huge
all of
clue.
us were that lucky, and I'm using quotations, air quotations for the viewers at home. So, but man,
The
thank you
31st.
so much for being on the
Absolutely. I
show.
appreciate you guys. I love doing business with you guys. I consider you guys friends. I love that I can call you and ask for help, and you always do the extra effort. And
Thanks, man.
that's why I think everyone should be using Urban Young right now, man.
We're supposed to be plugging you. you know, so
The 34-year overnight success. The 34-year overnight success.
Yes.
well, man, how can, kind of quick plug, obviously you got the shop opening in, here in town, which is going to be unbelievable. I'm so excited about that.
Grand opening. I see a big grand opening.
Yep. Can be a good
Big
party.
cooker out in the big cooker out there.
Gonna have coffee, drinks, whatnot. It's
Barbecue.
Sabrosa beers.
Barbecue. Yeah, let's get Rod out there. I'm gonna take out the mic. I was like,
we got the Sabrosa beer launching again
Yep.
in February, right?
February 12th. So that'll be at Hourglass in Longwood. We'll be having information out. But to see what we do, we have multiple sides. We have theshadowconspiracy.com, sabrosabrand.com, rantbmx.com, Sparky's distribution.com. It goes on. There's so many, man.
Hey,
It's
Lorenzo,
amazing.
by the way, when we post this, let's make sure we put all these in the comments for everybody that they can see all these brands. I mean, you guys are going to absolutely blown away if you haven't heard of this. If you haven't, you're probably under a rock. His stuff is absolutely fire. So, but man, thank you so much for being on the show. It's
Awesome.
always a
Appreciate
pleasure.
you guys.
Absolute pleasure, dude.
We can keep talking for hours.
I know, right? No question. No question.
And man, guys, thank you so much. I'll tell you what, if you haven't subscribed to the podcast, I'd ask you, especially after this episode, subscribe to the podcast. And you guys are amazing. Have a great rest of the week. Life is meant to be extraordinary, not ordinary. There you go. Let's rock.
Amen.
Thank you, Ronnie.